Do you ever hear a phone ring when you know no one should be calling? I'm not talking about a wrong number or a robocall. I mean that strange, deep-down feeling that someone on the other end of the line knows too much about you. That's someone out. There is waiting at watching. It happened to me. I should have ignored it. I should have just turned over, gone back to sleep. But it wasn't the kind of ring you ignore. Not after everything I've seen, everything I've done. It was like a ghost knocking at my door. I've been retired for 5 years now. Got my little place out near some woods. Peaceful, quiet, no one bothering me. That's how I like it. But there's always that feeling, you know. That nagging feeling that you can't escape. It follows you. Like a shadow. Or in my case, like a damn truck. On the same road every time, but now it wasn't a truck. It was a phone call. And it came from a company that's been dead and gone for decades. It was a cold night, the kind where the wind makes everything feel like it's about to break. I'd just finished off a bottle of whiskey and was watching the flames flicker in the fireplace when the old landline rang. Ring, ring. I stared at it for a second. Didn't move. My gut tightened. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as though something in the air was different now. Who the hell would be calling me this late? I reached for the phone, not sure why I did it. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was curiosity. But when I lifted the receiver, it felt wrong. A deep, icy chill ran through my veins. "Yeah?" I said, my voice rough from the whiskey. There was silence at first. Not even breathing, just static. I could hear the crackling like the old trucks used to make on the CB radio. Then a voice. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Dispatch from the dead. I froze. My heart stopped. It was a voice I recognized. Hell, I should have recognized it. It was Harry from the old trucking company Eastwood Freight, a company that shut down years ago after a fire took out half the warehouse, killing 3 of the drivers. Harry had been one of them. I hadn't heard from him since the accident. "Harry?" I whispered, even though I knew it couldn't be him. He was dead. This is a joke, right? There was a long pause. I could hear faint breathing on the other end, like someone was standing in the shadows, just waiting for me to react. The voice spoke again. "We need you back on the road. We have a job for you." I wasn't sure what was worse, the voice itself or the fact that the phone line felt so damn real. The static was gone now, replaced by a crystal-clear connection. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came. "Hout!" I felt my throat dry up like the dust from a desert road. "Where do I pick up?" I managed to croak, my instincts kicking in. The voice didn't respond immediately. I heard a soft click in the background, like someone had flipped through. "Paperwork, Highway 67, south of town. 10 a.m. sharp. The job's already waiting for you." The line went dead. Now normally when a call like that happens, you'd think it's just some damn prank. Some kids messing around or someone playing games, but I knew better. The way the voice sounded, like it was covered in dust and old leather. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. I stood there for a minute, holding the receiver, staring at the wall like it might give me the answers I needed. My heart was thumping in my chest, louder than the phone had ever been. After a few long minutes, I grabbed my jacket and keys, tossed the phone down, and stepped out into the cold night. I was halfway to my truck before I realized what I was doing. "Hell, I'm too old for this," I muttered to myself. But I couldn't stop. I had to see it through. Even if it was a ghost. The roads were dark as hell that night, empty, silent. I wasn't sure what I expected when I pulled onto Highway 67, but I didn't expect to see a truck already there. It was old, real old. Looked like something from the 70s. The headlights were dim, but I could make out the faded logo of Eastwood Freight on the side, still legible, even though the paint had peeled away in most places. The damn truck was parked in the middle of nowhere, just waiting for me. I pulled up beside it and climbed out. My boots crunched against the gravel as I walked toward it. Then I saw the driver. He was sitting behind the wheel, head bowed. His hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly, I could see the knuckles whiten under his worn gloves. "Hey!" I shouted. "What's going on here?" The man didn't move, not even a twitch. I walked around to the driver's side. When I looked in the window, my stomach sank. It was Harry. Well, it looked like Harry. His skin was pale, waxy, like he'd been dead for years. His eyes were wide open, but they were empty. No life in them, just black pits. He didn't even blink. I took a step back, my heart thudding harder than ever. Jesus Christ, I muttered. What the hell is this? Suddenly, Harry's hand moved, slowly, too slowly. He reached out, his fingers scraping the glass, and a voice rasped from his cracked lips. The job's still waiting. That's when I realized I hadn't been called to drive. I was the cargo. Dispatch. From the dead. You ever sit in a truck cab and feel like someone else is breathing with you? Not next to you, not in the back, but with you. Like the cab is sharing your breath, like the air isn't yours anymore. That was the first sign, but it damn sure wasn't the last. I backed away from Harry's truck, heart slamming like a jackhammer. Whatever was behind that wheel wasn't him. Not anymore. His body might have still been sitting there, propped up and puppeted like a memory, but Harry was long gone. That voice on the phone. It wasn't Harry's. Not really. I should have left right then. I should have turned tail, thrown my keys in the nearest ditch, and driven home like my life depended on it. Because maybe it did. But something had its hooks in me already. Guilt? Curiosity? Or maybe the road itself just wanted me back. A few feet away sat a second truck. Mine, but not mine. This one looked like my old rig. The one I'd put 1,000,000 miles on before I retired. Same faded blue paint. Same scrape down the driver's side from that tight turn in Amarillo. Even the cracked mirror I'd duct-taped after that ice storm near Cheyenne was there. Exactly the same. It was like someone rebuilt my truck from the inside of my head. But this one was cleaner. Too clean. No bug guts on the grill. No dents. Nowhere new but old, wrong but right, and the keys were already in the ignition. I stared at it for a long time. I swear to God I could hear the damn thing breathing. I walked up real slow, opened the door. Everything inside was spotless. Not a single coffee stain, not a crumb. CB radio was powered off, but the display flickered once, like it was winking at me. Then I felt it. That breath again. Not on my neck. Not in my ears. Inside my lungs. I wasn't alone in there, but I got in because I'm a fool. Or maybe because some part of me knew the job wasn't over until I finished it. The moment I sat down, the CB crackled. No one touched it. I didn't flip the switch. But the damn thing lit up like it had been waiting years for me to come back. Freight pickup confirmed. Manifest in the glove box. The voice was flat. Tinny, no accent, no warmth, just cold dead dispatch. My fingers hovered over the glove box. I didn't want to open it. I knew, somehow, whatever was inside was going to change everything. But I opened it anyway. There was a clipboard, yellowed paper, ink smudged like someone had cried on it. But it was legible. Cargo, 11, deceased, manifest, 774. A pickup, Low Hollow Cemetery. Drop-off, Foglight Rest Stop Exit, 19 ETA, 3:33 a.m. And below that, in smaller, sharper writing, do not open trailer, do not look inside, do not acknowledge the passenger. I stared at that last line until the letters started swimming. Acknowledge the passenger. What the hell did that mean? I hadn't even noticed I was already on the road. Hands on the wheel, foot on the pedal, trees whipping by like shadows in a slideshow. It was like the truck had taken over. Like I was just along for the ride. 10 minutes down the highway, I felt. Cadet cold, not like a sea cold, not like crack the window cold. This was coffin cold, the kind of cold that lives in the marrow of your bones. The kind that doesn't care how many layers you wear. Something was in the cab with me. Not in the passenger seat. Not in the sleeper. Just everywhere. I glanced at the mirror. Nothing. I glanced again. Still nothing. Then, breath, right next to my ear, long, slow, like someone exhaled just to let me know they could. I didn't look, I couldn't. I remembered the note. Do not acknowledge the passenger. But the truck did. The CB crackled again. Stay en route. Do not stop, he's watching. Now if that ain't the creepiest damn sentence you ever hear in a sealed truck cab, I don't know what is. I clenched the wheel tighter, knuckles white, jaw locked. That's when the seat next to me sank. Like, weight pressed into it, I didn't turn. But I knew there was something there. Sitting. Watching. The fog started thickening on the road. Real thick, like driving through milk. Could barely see 5 feet ahead, and the trailer, it started thudding soft, rhythmic, like someone or something was knocking from the inside. 3 knocks, then silence, then a whisper. Low, hoarse. Are we almost there? I nearly swerved off the damn road, but I didn't answer, didn't blink, just kept driving. Mile marker after mile marker, watching the exit signs count down to fog light rest stop. I started thinking about all the runs I'd done back in the day. The weird jobs, the creepy stops, the night drives that felt a little too quiet. Was this always happening? Had I just never noticed? Was someone or something always riding with me? I pulled into Foglight at 3:32 a.m., trailer still thumping softly, passenger still silent. I parked, engine ticking down, everything still. No wind, no noise. Then the CB lit up one last time. Freight delivered, manifest complete. I turned to the passenger seat. It was empty, but the seat was wet and cold and pressed down like someone had been sitting there for hours. I stepped out into the fog, knees trembling, heart pounding. The trailer door was open. I never opened it. But it was open now. Inside. Nothing, except for a smell I'll never forget. Grave dirt. I slammed it shut and drove off without looking back. Didn't matter where I was going, just that I was moving, that I was away from whatever the hell that was. But the next night, the phone rang again. You ever hear kids laughing when there ain't no kids around? That thin, high-pitched giggle that don't match the hour, don't fit the place, and sure as hell don't come from anything you can see? It's like hearing wind in a sealed room, or footsteps on shag carpet. Just wrong. And let me tell you, wrong. Don't even begin to cover what happened next. The night after Foglight, I smashed the landline into a dozen pieces. Didn't matter. It rang anyway. The pieces didn't move, didn't glow, didn't float. That'd be too easy. No, this horror plays it quiet. Slow, creeps in your bones. I was in bed, dog-tired, mind spinning, when the damn ring filled the room. Clear, loud, impossible. It came from the receiverless cord, just sitting there on my nightstand like it still had something to say, and I don't know why, I picked it up, held the dead end of the wire to my ear like I hadn't burned it with a hammer hours earlier. And the voice on the other end. Not Harry, not dispatch, this one was smaller, younger, and giggling. Ready for your next job, Mr. Driverman? I damn near threw the thing across the room. But I didn't, because the voice kept talking. Same truck, new cargo, don't peek, don't speak, and whatever you do, don't sing along, sing. Before I could say a word, I heard the same cold, emotionless voice from the last ride cut in. Manifest 775, 5 minors, unclaimed, pick up in Hollow Pines Orphanage, ETA, 2:06 a.m. Then silence, Hollow Pines. That place hadn't existed. In 30 years, I remembered it. Just a name on a chain-link gate along Route 12, halfway buried in weeds and time. Used to be an orphanage before the fire. Another fire. Lot of those in this job, they never found the kids, just the burned-out shells of beds. Tiny shoes melted to the floorboards, and now apparently they were waiting on me. I don't remember walking out to the truck. Don't remember grabbing the keys or the gloves or even my boots. Just remember sitting behind the wheel and realizing I was already halfway to Hollow Pines, fog curling around the cab like smoke in a movie. This time, I didn't even try to fight it. I just drove. The orphanage appeared out of nowhere. No signs. No lights, just there. Tall broken windows like hollow eyes. A playground with no children, just rusted swings squeaking in wind that wasn't blowing, and parked beside the crumbling gate was my trailer. Already loaded, already closed, already locked. I didn't ask questions, didn't check the manifest again, just got in, hands tight on the wheel, and pulled out slow. The moment I hit the highway, the laughter started, soft at first, like a memory. Then, sharper, closer. It filled the cab, everywhere, not from the back, not from the trailer, from the vents, the dash. The damn speakers like the truck was laughing with them, and then they started singing, low, off-key, childlike, over and over, and every time they hit that last line, the truck shook, not from the road, not from speed, but from something inside. I turned. Off the radio still sang, I unplugged the CB, still sang. I screamed for them to stop. They giggled louder. Then came the knocking, not from one place, from everywhere. Roof, doors, floorboards. Inside the dash, tiny hands. Scratching, scraping, knocking. They were in the truck, or the truck was them. I passed a mile marker that just said, "Stay quiet." Next one, "No eyes in the mirror." I looked anyway, and I saw them, 5 of them, crammed into the sleeper behind me. No faces, just masks, paper plate masks like kids make in kindergarten. Painted smiles and red crayon eyes. One had a crown made of zip ties. One had bunny ears. One was licking the window, though I don't know if it had a tongue. They waved. I jerked the wheel, fishtailed, almost clipped a guardrail. Fog swallowed the world. Couldn't see the road anymore. Couldn't see me anymore. I was just a ghost in a truck full of echoes. Then, just as sudden as it started, it stopped. The laughter, the singing, the cold. I was alone again. The trailer was still. The fog lifted, and I saw a sign. Fog light, rest stop, 0.1 miles. Same place, but different. I parked, stepped out. The trailer door stood wide open, empty. No masks. No kids. Just a broken music box lying on the floor. It was playing a warped, slow version of Ring Around the Rosie, and scribbled into the walls over and over were the words, "Tag, you're it." I walked back to the cab, closed the door, turned the key, didn't even flinch when the CB crackled to life. Manifest 775 complete. 1 passenger left behind. Then, the voice changed again and it whispered, "In the seat next to you." I turned my head slowly, heart hammering. The passenger seat, empty. But there was a juice box crushed flat on the cushion and 5 tiny fingerprints on the window. You ever? Driven through ice so slick the world don't feel real anymore. Where there's no traction, no control, just that floating, weightless feeling, like your truck might lift off the road and fly into some other place altogether. Now imagine that. But the ice is in your mind. And the road? The road ain't real anymore. You're just driving on memory. 3 nights after the kids in the fog, I tried to disappear, unplugged the power to the house, tore out the breaker box, smashed the backup phone I swear I never bought. Didn't matter. The call came anyway. This time, it rang through the walls, like the house itself was humming. And I didn't need to pick anything up. The voice just started. Manifest 776, 1 item. Route condition unstable, ETA variable. Then silence, and then warning black ice protocol active. I didn't know what that meant. Not yet, but I would. And I'd wish I hadn't. I blacked out, don't know how long. Woke up in the truck again. No surprise. At this point I should have expected it. But this time, the world outside the windshield was wrong. Not foggy, not dark, just blank. Like someone forgot to render the background. The trees were silhouettes. The road was shimmering, black like oil on water, and the sky, just a dull grey static, like a dead TV channel stretched over the clouds. I was driving, but the GPS was spinning in circles. The compass said no instead of a direction. And then I looked at the dashboard clock, 4:13 a.m. But every time I blinked, it reset. 13 a.m., over and over. Time had stopped. The CB clicked on. A new voice this time. Female. Smooth, cold as dry ice. You are now transporting Manifest 776. The driver is unstable. Do not attempt to exit the route. The route is you. I almost laughed. The route is me? What the hell does that even mean? Then I saw it. In the mirror. My own reflection. But wrong. He was grinning, and I sure as hell wasn't. His hands weren't on the wheel. They were holding his own head. And it was still smiling. I slammed the brakes. The truck didn't stop, didn't even slow, tires didn't squeal. Engine didn't growl, just kept gliding forward, smooth as glass. Then the road disappeared completely. And we were drifting, me and the truck, through nothing. That's when I saw the signs. Not road signs. Floating, flickering memory signs. Like mile markers in a dream. Welcome back to the crash site. Your manifest is you. No survivors. I felt the trailer behind me grow heavier, like it was filling with something, like the weight of all the jobs I ever took and all the ones I shouldn't have. I looked in the side mirror and saw every version of me, Dead, burned, frozen in the cab, crushed. Beneath the load 1,000 deaths I hadn't died. Yet then the voice returned, pull over to transfer cargo. I didn't move. Repeat, pull over. Still nothing. Final warning, transfer or become cargo. Then I saw the off-ramp, not a real one. It wasn't even part of the world, just floating there in the void, a glowing blue sign above it, exit. To reality, one driver only. And suddenly, I wasn't alone. There was a figure in the passenger seat, flickering, like static in human shape, same height as me, same build. It turned its head, no face, just light, and opened the door. Cold wind blasted in even though there was nothing outside, and the damn thing whispered, "It's my turn to drive." I gripped the wheel tighter. "Like hell it is," I said, but my hands were shaking because deep down I knew what was happening. The black ice wasn't on the road. It was in my mind. I was slipping, losing traction with reality. And this thing, this version of me, it was the one I'd been leaving behind. Every time I took a job I shouldn't. Every time I made a delivery, I didn't understand. Every time I didn't ask questions. This was my replacement. I looked at the exit, then at the thing in my seat, then down at my hands. They were fading, fingers turning to smoke, veins flickering like wires in a busted screen. "I'm not done yet," I whispered. The figure tilted its head, curious. Then it said, "Neither are we." Suddenly the road was back. The void collapsed and I was skidding, real skidding, on actual ice now. Windshield fogging, snow whipping across the grill, lights ahead, fog light rest stop, again. Of course. I cranked the wheel, tires howling, trailer. Swaying hard behind me, just barely made it into the lot without jackknifing. The truck rumbled to a halt. I sat there, breath shallow. Pulse racing, no passenger, no static man, just me and the hum of the engine. The CB fizzled once more. Final voice, flat, emotionless. Same as before. Manifest incomplete. Passenger resisted. Rerouting in progress. Then, next stop, manifest 777. Final job, no return. I didn't sleep that night, didn't go home. Just stared into the dark because I knew what was coming. And I knew it wasn't just another delivery. It was the last route. And maybe I'd be the one getting picked up. You ever drive a road you don't remember turning onto, where you blink and suddenly everything's different? The stars are gone, the sky don't look like sky, and the trees are watching. That's exit 0. And brother, you don't find it. It finds you. I hadn't. Turned the engine off in 2 days, didn't sleep, didn't eat. I just kept the wheels rolling and my hands on the wheel like I was trying to outrun something I couldn't name. But it wasn't chasing me. It was guiding me. Because when dispatch says, "Final job," you don't get to argue. Not anymore. I was somewhere past the last real truck stop, halfway between states that don't even touch when the CB flared back to life, like a wound splitting open. Rerouting complete. Final route exit 0. Manifest 777, return to origin. Cargo driver. That was all it said. No coordinates, no drop-off. Just that. Return to origin. Cargo. Me. I was already dead and didn't know it. At least that's how it felt. The moment. I saw the sign, rusted metal, half-eaten by moss and grime. I knew the game had changed. Exit 0. All loads final, no highway number. No town, no services, just an arrow, and a cold pull in my gut like a magnet yanking at my soul. And my hands? They turned the wheel without asking me first. The ramp was steep, real steep. I mean steeper than a mountain pass, like I was driving, down into the center of something buried deep. So deep even God wouldn't look. The road narrowed to a single lane. Fog pressed against the glass, but it wasn't fog, it was memory. I saw flashes in it. Things I'd buried. A kid on the side of the road, thumb out, eyes hollow. A woman screaming in my rear view as I drove away from a crash I didn't cause, but didn't stop to help either. Old jobs, old sins, old ghosts, all coming back to ride shotgun. Then the radio came on. Not CB, not FM. Just something. A voice. My voice. telling stories I never told, confessing things I didn't want to hear. March 4, 1997. You hit something on Highway 18, told yourself it was a deer, you didn't stop. November 22nd, 2004. You saw the lights under the trailer. You knew they were wrong, you kept going. June 13th, 2015. You dropped that sealed load at the refinery. You heard the knocking. Each line hit like a hammer, and I kept driving, because what else could I do? Then I saw the gate, black iron, 12 feet high, rust flaking like dead skin, and in the middle a faded wooden sign swinging on a single nail. Welcome to Dead Freight Terminal under that, hand-painted in crimson. No deliveries, just returns. The truck shut itself off. No joke. Keys still in, fuel still in the green. Engine just stopped, like the truck knew we were done. I stepped out. The gravel crunched like bones under my boots, and the fog parted just enough to show me the loading dock. Empty, except for one clipboard. One form. My name, my date of birth, and a space next to final delivery. It was blank, waiting for the time of death. Then I saw the other trucks, lined up in the mist, old ones, rust-bitten, wheel-less ghosts of rigs I hadn't seen in decades. Names I remembered. Dale, Reggie, Big Mo, Tina. Drivers who vanished. All of them. Every trucker who took the wrong run, or just disappeared one night without a trace. They were all here, but not alive. They stood at the dock, watching me, not moving, not blinking, not breathing, just waiting. And behind them? The dispatcher's office. The light was on, just one bare bulb swaying. I didn't want to go in, but my boots moved without asking. The desk was empty, dust thick as ash, a CB mic hanging like a noose, then a voice behind me. You made good time. Turned, and there he was, Harry, or what was left of him, half a face, one boot, and those eyes, dead black but tired, real tired. He held out a paper. Final form. You sign, you rest, you don't, you go back out there. I looked at it. Just a single sentence. I accept delivery of myself. I didn't know what that meant, still don't, but my hand reached for the pen, then stopped. I looked at Harry. Can I ask something? He blinked, or maybe twitched. One, how long's this place been here? He smiled, or tried, since the first truck broke down and the driver died behind the wheel. We've been waiting ever since. I signed. The second I dotted the last letter of my name, I felt the weight lift. Not like freedom, not like relief, more like finally stopping, and then the office disappeared. So did the dock. So did Harry. And I was back in the cab, driving one. Last road. No signs, no time, no destination. But this time, no cargo, no passengers, just me and dispatch on the line, whispering, final manifest complete. Welcome home, driver. You ever hear the word deadhead? In trucker speak, it means driving. With an empty trailer, no cargo, no load, just burning diesel and eating miles. A dead trip. A waste of time. Unless you're the cargo. I should have stayed at exit 0. Should have let the clipboard swallow my name and fade into the fog with the others. But somewhere between signing the line and sitting back in the cab, I made a mistake. Maybe I wasn't ready to stop, maybe I couldn't. Maybe dispatch knew that, because the road I'm on now, it never ends. At first I thought I was just coasting back into normalcy. The sky came back, the stars, the wind, even the hum of old country tunes on the AM dial. No fog, no voices, no cold breath crawling up my spine. Hell, for the first 100 miles or so I let myself believe I'd actually made it out, but truckers know the road. We feel it in our bones, and something was off. For one, the highway signs weren't right, they'd flicker, glitch like reality was trying to buffer around me. Next gas. Welcome to County. Exit. No left turns, and the mileage counters? They counted up. The CB crackled, no voice this time, just static, but in the static, whispers. My name. My real name. Not the handle I used on the road, not Gear Shift or Johnny Diesel or any of the CB monikers I wore like armor over the years. This was my birth name, a name I hadn't heard since my mama passed. The truck was calling me. Or maybe it always had been. Then came the lights, first in the mirrors, then above me, then in front, headlights. Hundreds of them, some burned yellow, some ghost blue, some flickered like candle flames. They didn't move, didn't pass, just stared. And every single one was attached to a truck just like mine, old, busted, forgotten, and in each cab, a driver, watching me. I tried to pull off, tried to U-turn, tried. To stop, the wheel wouldn't move. The pedal stayed down, speed stayed steady. 66 spags more. Even the radio only played one thing. This is the end of the line. This is the end of the line. This is the end of the line. Over and over. The engine never needed gas, the sky never turned daylight, the clock never changed. I was stuck. That's when I saw the mirror again. You remember that trick mirror from Chapter 2? The one that reflected things that weren't there. It came back, but this time it didn't show me. It showed everyone else, every dispatch I'd ever taken, every load I should have refused, every town I passed through and left worse behind me, every passenger. The man with no hands from Manifest 771, the 5 children from 775, all smiling wide beneath their paper plate masks, the cold man from the black ice, and Harry, my old friend, sitting in the passenger seat again, only now he wasn't dead. He looked alive, younger, happy, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. He leaned forward and said one thing. "You should have stayed, brother." Then he vanished. The CB screamed. No words, just a scream, long and shrill and impossible for anything human to make. The truck jerked, lights flickered, the speedometer snapped to 0, but I was still moving, still driving, dead-heading, forever. And then dispatch spoke. Final time. Driver 777 confirmed. Manifest fulfilled. Destination, eternal freight loop. You may now remove your hands from the wheel. I looked down. They were already gone. Just smoke where fingers used to be. The wheel turned itself. The engine thrummed, soft and steady, and I realized I wasn't driving anymore. I was just cargo. That's the price, ain't it? All those miles, all those runs. You think you're the one making choices. But out here on the haunted routes, there ain't no choices. Just roads and dispatch. So now I ride. Every night, through nowhere, towns and ghost exits and frost-covered mirrors. Say other drivers sometimes, new ones, rookies, guys like you. You ever feel a cold wind behind your cab? Ever hear static in your CB with no one around? Ever see an old freightliner out of place on a desert highway? That's me. Don't wave. Don't. Flash your brights, and for God's sake, don't answer the call, because once you take that first dispatch, you're already deadheading forever. You ever hear about the eyeless hitchhiker who roams the back roads of Louisiana? The one whose face is nothing but a skull, staring into the dark with empty sockets that seem to swallow your soul. Most folks call it a creepy urban legend. Some say it's a ghost, some say it's a curse. But if you're ever driving alone late at night, somewhere near the swamps and bayous, you might just find out for yourself. I was hauling freight through the Louisiana backcountry, rolling down a stretch of highway that barely saw traffic. The kind of road locals avoid at night, 'cause the swamps got a way of twisting reality. You know that eerie silence, like the woods are holding their breath? Yeah, that silence. My radio was playing a scratchy blues station, crackling in and out between the static. My eyes were heavy from the long haul, and the road ahead looked like a black ribbon melting into the night. Then, out of nowhere, I saw him, a figure standing on the shoulder with his thumb out. At first I thought it was just some poor guy stuck on the side of the road waiting for a ride. But the closer I got, the more my stomach turned. His face wasn't a face. Where his eyes should have been, just empty. Hollow sockets stared back at me like the depths of a tomb. It was like a skull was pressed against the window. My heart nearly stopped. I slammed on the brakes and pulled over. The engine idled as I tried to catch my breath. I cracked the window and called out, "Hey, you need a ride?" No answer. He just opened the door and climbed in without a word. His jacket smelled like swamp rot and old smoke. The instant he sat beside me, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged up the windshield, and the truck felt heavier, like something was squeezing the air out of the cab. I glanced at him, and those empty sockets felt like they were burning holes into my soul. Then the radio went dead. Static hissed and popped, but no music, no voice. The only sound was a whisper, soft but clear. "Drive faster." I didn't ask why. I hit the gas. The road ahead stretched on endlessly, disappearing into darkness. But I couldn't stop. Something told me if I did, I'd never leave that place again. The shadows in the swamp seemed to twist and lean closer, and I knew this wasn't just some creepy hitchhiker story. This was something far worse. Folks around these parts talk about the eyeless ghost encounter like it's a warning. Some say it's the spirit of a man who died in a crash decade ago, forever cursed to haunt the roads where he lost his life. Others say it's a demon, feeding on the fear of anyone foolish enough to pick him up. Whatever it was, I wasn't sure. I was going to make it out alive, and that was only the beginning. The night outside was thick with swamp fog, heavy and suffocating, curling through the trees and creeping up to the edge of the highway like some living thing. The kind of fog that muffles sound and makes the darkness feel alive. Inside the cab of my truck, the air was suddenly cold, too cold for a Louisiana summer night. I kept stealing glances at my passenger. That ghastly skull where his face should have been, no eyes, no flesh, just bone. The dashboard light flickered, casting twisted shadows that danced across his hollow sockets. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard, trying to force down the panic rising in my chest. The radio crackled, then died, leaving nothing but static. That's when I heard it, a whisper, barely audible like a breeze slipping through the cracked window. "Drive faster." I snapped my head toward the voice, but there was no one else in the truck besides me and him. The whisper came again, louder this time, urgent, almost desperate. "Drive faster." I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. The engine roared, tires spinning on the wet asphalt. The truck surged forward, headlights slicing through the gloom, but the darkness didn't recede. It seemed to lean closer, like hungry shadows reaching out to swallow us whole. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The swamp behind us stretched on forever, black and endless, but the air shimmered like heat haze even in the cold. Something lurked there, something I couldn't see clearly, moving just beyond the trees. Trying to break the nightmare silence, I swallowed my fear and asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" No answer. The hitchhiker sat perfectly still, his skeletal face unmoving yet somehow alive in its emptiness. Then a sudden shudder ran through the truck. The steering wheel jerked as if gripped by unseen hands. My heart jumped into my throat. Something was fighting us, gripping the road, trying to stop me. Suddenly a flash of movement caught my eye in the side mirror. A shape, dark, shifting, flitted alongside us in the shadows. I blinked and it was gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, but there was no signal here, just that haunting message flashing on the screen. "Don't stop. Don't look back." I stared at the message, then back at the hitchhiker. The bones beneath his skull seemed to twitch almost like a smile. I swallowed again, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The air inside the truck grew heavier, thick with the scent of swamp rot and something coppery, like fresh blood. Outside, the shadows writhed and pulsed, dark limbs stretching from the trees as if trying to grab us. I realized then, I wasn't just driving through the swamp. I was being hunted. "Drive faster." The whisper hissed again. My pulse thundered as I stomped the gas. The truck roared like a beast, tires screeching on the slick road. But the darkness kept pace, closing in like a pack of hungry wolves. Through the fog, I glimpsed faint lights ahead, a flicker of something unnatural, like lanterns swinging on ancient hooks. That had to be the edge of the haunted stretch, the place where, according to the legends, the eyeless hitchhiker appears to claim his next victim. The night pressed in from all sides, and the ghostly passenger beside me didn't say a word, but I could feel his gaze burning through the empty sockets, watching, waiting. I gripped the wheel tighter, knowing one thing for sure. This road didn't want me to leave alive. The closer we got to the haunted part of the highway, the part the locals call the Deadman's Bend, the thicker the fog got. It wasn't just ordinary swamp fog. No, this stuff felt unnatural, like it was alive, crawling in through the cracks around my truck's doors and windows, wrapping itself around my skin like cold fingers. The radio stayed dead. The engine was all I could hear, roaring beneath. The tires as the road twisted sharper and sharper through the trees. I stole a glance at my passenger again. The eyeless hitchhiker hadn't moved, but somehow his presence felt bigger, more terrifying. His empty eye sockets seemed to glow faintly, in the dark like twin black holes swallowing the light. Then the whisper came again, almost there. I shivered. The highway curved sharply to the left. A crooked old wooden sign, barely hanging on rusty chains, read, "Dead Man's Bend, turn back," in faded letters. But I couldn't turn back. Not now. The stories I'd heard all came flooding. Back, truckers and travelers who vanished on this stretch of road. Their rigs found abandoned miles later. Tires flat. Engines cold. Some swore they picked up the same eyeless hitchhiker, only to lose him somewhere in the fog. Others said the hitchhiker was a warning, a spirit tied to the place where someone died long ago. A curse, some said. And me? I was stuck right in the middle of it. I pressed my foot harder on the accelerator, desperate to outrun whatever was hunting me. That's when the truck jolted violently. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding like a war drum. The eyeless hitchhiker turned his head slowly towards me, no eyes, no expression, just that hollow skull. Then his jaw moved, and a voice, dry and hollow as a tomb, whispered, "You can't run." The headlights flickered, and the fog thickened until it swallowed the whole road. For a moment I thought I saw shapes moving in the mist, shadowy figures, writhing and twisting, reaching for the truck like ghostly claws. I forced my eyes back, on the road, but the real terror was yet to come. Up ahead, a figure stepped into the road, a woman in a tattered white dress, her face hidden in shadow. She stood perfectly still, arms outstretched like she was begging. The truck skidded to a stop just inches from her. I looked over at my passenger. His skull seemed to grin. The woman turned slowly and vanished into the fog. That's when I knew. This stretch of road was alive with the restless dead, and I was trapped, in the middle of their nightmare. After that woman vanished into the thick, swirling fog, I sat frozen in my seat, heart hammering so loud I thought it might burst through my chest. The headlights barely cut through the grey haze anymore. It felt like we were swallowed whole by the swamp itself. My passenger, the eyeless hitchhiker, turned slowly toward me again, that empty skull face gleaming eerily under the dashboard. Light! But this time something was different. It wasn't just a hollow shell staring at me anymore. No, I could feel something behind those sockets, something ancient and hungry. Then the whisper came again, softer now, almost pleading. "Look." I blinked, and the cab grew ice cold. My breath puffed out in visible clouds, even though the AC was blasting heat. I turned to the windshield and squinted into the fog. At first, I saw nothing but the endless grey. Then, tiny glowing dots appeared, faint, flickering like fireflies, but they weren't bugs, they were eyes. A whole swarm of eyes watching from the woods, blinking slowly, watching us. The swamp was alive, watching. My skin crawled. The radio crackled back to life, but instead of music, a distorted voice spat words. "You shouldn't have picked him." "Hup!" I slammed the radio off, heart racing. The eyeless hitchhiker's jaw moved again. "You're too close now." Suddenly, the truck jolted violently. I nearly lost control. In the side mirror, I saw something moving fast, like a shadow streaking. Across the road behind me, the back tires skidded on wet leaves, sending a shower of mud flying up. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, and pushed the gas again. The eyes in the fog multiplied. Dozens now, staring from every direction. A cold voice echoed through the cab, whispering names. "Mary. James. Don't look back." I swallowed hard and kept my eyes locked on the road ahead. Then I noticed it. The hitchhiker's skull face wasn't just a hollow shell anymore. There were cracks forming, thin spiderweb lines spreading across the bone, and from those cracks, a faint red glow seeped out, like embers in a dying fire. I realized the hitchhiker wasn't just a ghost. He was something else, something breaking apart, something desperate. And me? I was his last ride. His truck felt like it was trembling. Every vibration in the engine, every shake of the cab was magnified 100-fold. The fog outside pressed harder against the glass, thickening into a solid wall that seemed to suffocate. The world. I glanced again at the hitchhiker. The cracks in his skull had grown wider now. Glowing red veins pulsed beneath the bone like they were alive, something evil roiling just beneath the surface. His voice came again, low and urgent, echoing. Inside my mind, not just in the cab. You're running out of time. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel. I didn't know if it was fear or some awful curse seeping into my bones. I tried to speak, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the swamp. Then the truck jolted violently again. The back doors of the trailer behind me creaked open, slow, deliberate. Cold air poured in like a scream. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror. The trailer was empty, except for dozens of glowing eyes staring back. Not the kind you see in animals. The eyes were red, burning like coals in the blackness. I slammed my foot on the gas, desperate to put distance between me and the nightmare. But the swamp wasn't done. The road ahead twisted sharply again, and in the distance, I could see the faint glow of a fire. Campfire, or something worse. Suddenly, the radio burst to life with that eerie, whispering voice. "Stop, it's too late." My heart hammered. The hitchhiker turned to me, his cracked skull glowing bright now. "End it." I had no idea what he meant, but I knew one thing. If I stopped here, I wouldn't leave this road alive. The fire ahead grew brighter, illuminating a circle of figures standing still in the fog. I squinted and realized they were people. No, not people. Shadows twisted into human forms, their faces pale, eyes hollow. I passed them by, but their voices echoed in my ears. "Join us. Stay forever." The hitchhiker reached out a bony hand. His touch was ice-cold, burning at the same time. I screamed, fighting the urge to let go of the wheel. The road was closing in, and I was running out of time. The headlights barely cut through the thick, choking fog. The world outside was a blurred wash of grey and shadow, the swamp swallowed whole by the creeping mist. That flickering firelight ahead was like a beacon or a trap. I couldn't tell which, but I knew I had no choice. This was where it all ended. The hitchhiker's skeletal hand, cold as the grave yet burning like molten iron, gripped my wrist tighter with every second. I could feel the strange pulse beneath his cracked skull, a dark rhythm beating in time with the swamp's own eerie heartbeat. His hollow sockets, empty yet somehow watching, locked onto mine. "End it," he whispered again, voice echoing inside my head like a voice from beyond the grave. But this time there was a crack in his tone, something like desperation or sorrow? I wasn't sure if he was pleading with me or warning me. I slammed on the brakes hard. The truck fishtailed, mud and leaves spraying in a chaotic mess behind me. The trailer swung dangerously, threatening to jackknife and send us both crashing into the swampy ditch. Up ahead, the ghostly figures standing around the fire turned slowly toward me. Their pale faces were twisted into silent screams, eyes nothing, but black pits glowing faintly with otherworldly light. Shadows stretched out from them like grasping fingers, reaching for me across the road. My chest tightened. My breath came in ragged gasps. There was no running from this, no escaping the curse of the swamp. The hitchhiker's grip became ice and fire all at once, freezing, burning, unbearable. I wanted to pull away, but my muscles refused. I was a puppet, in the hands of something dark and ancient. The voices swirled around the cab, faint at first, then rising into a desperate chorus, chanting, "Join us! Stay forever, don't leave, stay!" Their words wrapped around me like a spiderweb, sticky and suffocating. I shut my eyes tight and screamed into the darkness, a raw, primal sound born from terror and fury. When I dared to open them again, everything was different. The fire had vanished. The figures dissolved into the fog, leaving nothing but the empty swamp behind. The fog itself seemed lighter, almost fragile, as if it had been holding its breath and finally let go. The truck's cab was silent, except for the steady hum of the engine. The hitchhiker's seat beside me was empty. No cracked skull, no glowing red veins, just the cold, worn leather seat, like nothing had happened. But on the dashboard, resting against the cracked glass of the windshield, lay a single, frozen black feather. It was small, delicate, and utterly out of place, a chilling reminder that some journeys never truly end, and some curses never fully lift. My hands trembled as I gripped the wheel again. The engine's hum, the only sound in the stillness. I pulled the truck back onto the highway, the endless black ribbon of road stretching ahead under a pale moon. I never saw the hitchhiker again. But sometimes, on nights when the fog thickens like a shroud and the swamp whispers in the wind, I swear I see those glowing red eyes watching from the tree line. waiting, silent and hungry, and sometimes, just sometimes, I think I hear that voice. Soft, chilling. Impossible to forget. End it. The road is long, the swamp is patient, and the eyeless hitchhiker, he's still out there somewhere in the shadows, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to pick him up. You ever wonder where your meat really comes from? I mean, we all know it comes from cows, pigs, or chickens, right? But what if it came from something else? Something that didn't belong on your plate? Yeah, that's what I started asking myself after I picked up that last haul. And trust me, you'll never look at a steak the same way again after hearing this one. I never planned on being a meat delivery driver. Hell, I never planned on being a truck driver at all. But when the bills pile up and your options narrow down to take it or leave it, you take what you can get. That's how I ended up behind the wheel of an old refrigerated truck, cruising down the back roads of nowhere, on a late-night meat run. It wasn't the kind of job that came with a lot of fanfare. In fact, most people would have probably called it boring. But you know what? I didn't mind it at first. The truck was old, the engine grumbled louder than my ex-wife's complaints, but it had a certain charm to it. The food warehouse I worked for, never mind the name, I don't even want to get into that right now, was quiet. That's what I liked about it. The kind of place that didn't care if you didn't want to ask too many questions. Just pick up the meat, deliver it, and get paid. But this route was different. I'd been driving for a few months now, always taking the same path out into the boonies, stopping at the same sketchy small-town butcher shops. No one really bothered me, and I didn't ask any questions. I just delivered the goods, signed the papers, and moved on. But there was always something a little off about those places. You know the kind of towns I'm talking about. The ones that seem too quiet, too perfect. The streets are too empty, the lights too dim, and everyone's always a little too polite, like they're hiding something. It was on one of these runs, just last week, that I started to notice things, odd things. The first sign was the meat itself. I picked up the load from a place I'd never been to before, down a dirt road that had no business even being on a map. The butcher's shop looked old, rustic maybe, but not in a charming way. More like the kind of place you'd expect to find in a horror movie, you know? A dilapidated building with old wooden beams and a neon open sign flickering in. The window. The butcher. He was an older guy with a thick grey beard and hands that looked like they'd spent years cutting into flesh. Didn't seem all that welcoming. He just handed me the order forms and nodded toward the back, where the meat was stacked in thick plastic-wrapped slabs. I'd gotten used to the smell of raw meat, but this place, it had an entirely different scent. Something a little off. Something almost sweet. Got a big one today, he muttered, his eyes lingering on me for too long. I smiled politely, like any good delivery driver, and started loading the back of the truck. But there was something about that meat. It didn't look right. I mean, it looked like meat, sure, but there was something strange about the way it was cut, the texture, the color. It wasn't the usual beef or pork I'd seen before. It was pale, almost like it had been bleached. But the thing that really bugged me? It didn't smell like meat. It smelled like decay, like something that had been dead for too long. I didn't question it, not at first. I was just there to do my job and get paid. I shoved the weird slabs into the truck, slammed the door, and hit the road. I should have known then that something was wrong. But you know how it goes. You get into a rhythm, the hum of the road, the wind in your face, the sound of tires rolling over the asphalt. I didn't think about it again until I made my first delivery. That's when the real weirdness started. I pulled into the small town. Hell, I think it was called Mill Hollow, but I can't remember anymore, where I was supposed to drop off some of the meat. The place was practically deserted. A single streetlight flickered above the main square, casting a dim light on a row of old rundown buildings. I parked in front of the butcher shop, which, as always, had a half-open door and an old bell that rang as I stepped inside. The air smelled different in there, thick, like it had been stewing in something I couldn't quite place. The butcher, a younger guy this time, glanced up from the counter. He had that same distant look in his eyes as the older guy from the night before, and when he saw the meat I brought in, his face went pale. "You got all of it?" he asked, his voice tight. "Yeah, you asked for 2 pallets," I replied, trying to hide my unease. Should be enough for the week. He didn't move for a second. Then he nodded slowly, like he was forcing himself to process the words. "All right," he muttered, walking to the back. I watched him go, then noticed a strange noise behind the counter. A soft slithering sound like something crawling or writhing. I leaned in, trying to get a better look, but the butcher reappeared quickly. "Take it all out back," he said, practically shoving me toward the door. "Thanks for the delivery." I didn't argue. I had to get going anyway. But as I was leaving, I caught a glimpse of something in the back room, a shape moving in the shadows. I thought it was just my imagination at first, but then I heard a low, guttural growl. I froze, my heart pounding, but just like that, the door slammed behind me. I didn't say anything, but I felt it, the unease settling in my gut. Something wasn't right. Something was very wrong, and I had a bad feeling it was all tied to that meat. I got back in my truck, slammed the door shut, and hit the gas. I tried to shake the feeling, but it wasn't going anywhere. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, endless, and I couldn't help but wonder, what had I just delivered? The road was quiet, too quiet, like the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. It was just me and the truck, the hum of the engine, and the endless stretches of black asphalt in front of me. The headlights sliced through the dark, but they didn't make me feel any safer. If anything, they just illuminated the emptiness. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, like it was pressing against me from all sides. I had about 2 hours to go before I hit the next stop, another small town that was no stranger to late-night deliveries. I should have been focusing on the road, but the images from the butcher shop kept flashing in my mind. The way the meat had looked pale and waxy, almost like plastic. The strange way the butcher had acted when I showed up. That slithering sound. I couldn't shake it. Every time I thought about it, my stomach churned a little harder. As I cruised along, I tried to distract myself. I turned on the radio, but the usual static only made the silence worse. Every station sounded like it was cutting in and out, the voices warbling in and out of focus, barely audible. That didn't help either. I switched it off and leaned back in my seat, gripping the wheel a little harder. Then came the smell. It wasn't like any other smell I'd ever encountered on the road. This wasn't the sharp, bloody scent of raw meat or the sourness of old fuel. This was something wrong, something that didn't belong. It was sweet, almost sickly sweet, and it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't coming from the truck's vents. It wasn't something on the road. No, it was coming from the cargo hold behind me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The truck looked fine. The metal cargo door still shut tight, but that smell, God, it lingered like it was inside the truck with me, crawling into my lungs. I pulled over, my tires grinding against the gravel of the shoulder. My heartbeat picked up, thudding in my chest as I killed the engine and climbed out of the cab. The night air hit me, cold and biting, and I stood there for a second, just breathing. The scent was stronger out here, like it was coming from the truck itself. I walked around to the back, the weight of the air pressing against me, making it feel like I was moving through molasses. I grabbed the handle of the cargo door and pulled. It gave way with a soft groan, and the moment I opened it, the stench hit me full force. It wasn't just the meat. No, it was something else, something more alive. I almost gagged as I stepped back, my chest tight, but curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight from the cab and shined it inside. The light flickered as I swept it across the cargo, but nothing seemed out of place. The plastic-wrapped slabs were stacked neatly in the back, just like they'd been when I loaded them. There was no blood leaking, no strange signs, no signs of rot. But that smell, that god-awful smell. I stepped closer, lifting the beam of the flashlight toward the top shelf, where the most recent cuts of meat had been stored. My pulse raced as I scanned the slabs of flesh one by one. There was a thick, translucent layer on each one, like it was coated in something. I leaned in, closer, squinting, and that's when I saw it, a faint movement. It wasn't much, just a slight twitch beneath the plastic wrapping, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. I could feel the weight of the silence around me, pressing in like a vice. Every part of me screamed to slam the door and drive away, to get the hell out of there and forget everything I'd seen. But my legs moved before I could even think, and I reached out, pulling back a corner of the plastic covering one of the slabs, and that's when I saw it, a pair of eyes, small, barely open, but unmistakable. They blinked, slow and almost lazy, like they had all the time in the world. I recoiled, almost stumbling backward, and I almost dropped the flashlight in my panic. But I kept my grip tight on it, my hands trembling as I backed away from the truck. The eyes didn't move, but that was all I needed to know. The meat wasn't from animals, not by a long shot. I stood there for a long time, staring at the truck as if I was waiting for it to explain itself. But it didn't. And I couldn't stay out there forever, not in the middle of nowhere, with that disgusting smell still lingering in my nose. I had to make my delivery. I had to keep going. I couldn't turn back. I slammed the cargo door shut and jumped back into the truck, my hands shaking as I started the engine. I couldn't stop my mind from racing as I drove down the road again, the headlights carving through. The dark. The image of those eyes, the way they'd blinked, slow and knowing, stuck with me like a scar. It was the longest 2 hours of my life. The next stop was even worse than the last one. After that night, I didn't feel the same. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, like I was being hunted, tracked. And it wasn't just in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those eyes. They weren't just staring at me. They were watching, waiting. And when I couldn't stop thinking about them, the truck started to feel less like my vehicle and more like a cage. The smell from the cargo hold was still in the air, faint but persistent, clinging to the truck like a stain I couldn't scrub out. Every breath I took made it worse, but I had to keep going. I didn't have a choice. The bills kept stacking, up the warehouse kept calling, and I had another delivery to make, so I pressed on. The next stop was a butcher shop in a town called Granger's Hollow. I'd never been there before, but from the way the dispatcher had spoken, it sounded like another place where people just didn't ask questions. I'd gotten used to it by now, the way the delivery drivers spoke in half-jokes about the special customers, the places that didn't quite sit right. But it didn't hit me until I pulled into the gravel lot, and I realized just how empty it all felt. It was a quiet, dark little town, tucked away in the hills. The gas station was a hole in the wall, the lights flickering weakly above the pumps. The street seemed abandoned, the houses dark and lifeless, the windows like eyes that never blinked. But it was the butcher shop that got me. The little shack tucked away on the corner of Main Street. It was covered in shadows, and yet I couldn't stop staring at it, like the building itself was drawing me in, pulling me toward it. The windows were fogged up, condensation running down the glass as if there was something inside that wanted to keep people from looking too close. The sign above the door was barely visible through the grime. Its letters faded, but I could still make out Granger's Meat Supply in cracked red paint. I parked the truck, swallowed hard, and tried to keep my breath steady. No turning. Back. I grabbed the clipboard and the delivery papers, shoved them into my jacket pocket and approached the shop. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and the bell jingled weakly, like it was just going through the motions. The inside of the shop smelled even worse than I could have imagined. The smell wasn't just the usual bloody, iron-scented stench of fresh meat. It was something else, a bitter, sickeningly sweet odor that made my stomach churn. The butcher, an older man with a crooked nose and gnarled hands, was standing behind the counter, his head cocked slightly as if he'd been expecting me. His eyes didn't shine blue like the others, but there was something about them, something unsettling. They seemed too still, too focused. "You got the order?" he asked, his voice rough, like he hadn't spoken in days. I nodded and handed him the delivery slip. He barely glanced at it before waving me off. "Back room." "Through the door," he muttered. I couldn't see much of the back room from where I stood, but I could hear faint noises coming from behind the door. Scraping, shuffling, muttering. I made my way past the counter, feeling the butcher's gaze on me as I went. It was like he was trying to figure me out, dissecting me in ways I wasn't comfortable with, but I didn't stop, just pushed through the door into the dark back room. The first thing that hit me was the heat. It was stifling, as if the air had been thickened by something heavier than just humidity. The walls were lined with shelves filled with old jars, glass containers filled with liquids I couldn't identify. The place had a claustrophobic, almost suffocating feeling to it. Then there were the sounds. At first, I thought it was the usual sloshing of meat or blood, but the more I listened, the more it sounded like voices, low guttural whispers that seemed to echo from the shadows. I turned, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from, but all I could see were shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. "It's time," one whisper said. "You shouldn't have come," another one rasped. I froze, my blood running cold. Was someone else in here? I looked around, but the room seemed empty. Just the meat hanging from the hooks, its dark, shiny surfaces, catching the dim light. But then I saw it. In the far corner of the room, half hidden in shadow, was a large metal door. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong there, like it had been hastily installed in a hurry. There were chains wrapped around the handles, rusted and worn from use. And as I stared at it, I noticed something on the other side. Something moving. I couldn't make out what it was at first, but then the shape stepped forward into the dim light. It wasn't human. Not really. It was a person, yes, but there was something about it. Its skin was stretched too tight, almost translucent, as if it had been pulled over bones that didn't fit anymore. Its eyes were too wide, too round, and they stared at me, with a hunger that made my skin crawl. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. It grinned, and that was when I realized I'd been looking at it all wrong. It wasn't the meat that was the problem. It was what was inside it. The thing behind the meat. Before I could move, I heard the butcher's voice behind me. "Don't be foolish," he said, his voice low and raspy. "It won't stop until you're one of them." I spun around, my heart racing. The butcher was standing in the doorway now, his hands slowly pulling the chains off the door, his face pale. His mouth curled into a knowing smile, but there was nothing comforting about it. "You're going to stay for dinner," he said with a slow, deliberate grin. And that was when I realized it. Whatever this meat was, whatever had been delivered, all these years, I wasn't just delivering it anymore, it was waiting for me. It had been waiting for me, and now I was going to become part of the delivery. The air in the truck felt heavier now. The weight of it pressed down on my chest, suffocating. My head spun, and my stomach churned. The soft hum of the engine was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality as I pushed through the thick silence, winding my way further down the road. But no matter how far I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It wasn't just my nerves. It was something else, something that seemed to creep into the very air I breathed, and the smell, it was still there, faint but lingering like a ghost, a sickly sweet odor that I couldn't quite place, but it had a way of seeping into everything. Every breath I took tasted wrong. I couldn't escape it. The glowing red digits of the dashboard clock blinked with an eerie calmness, marking the time in that sterile, detached way that made it seem as though the world was moving in slow motion. It had been hours since I left the butcher's shop, but it felt like minutes, or like I was stuck in some kind of loop. I rubbed my eyes trying to focus, but the more I tried to ignore it, the more alive everything seemed. Even the cargo hold in the back, filled with plastic-wrapped slabs, felt wrong. The entire truck felt like a coffin now. Every bump in the road sent a ripple of unease through my bones. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible over the thum of the truck, as if the wind itself was speaking directly to me. My heart skipped a beat. I thought maybe I'd imagined it, but then it came again. "You're next." I slammed on the brakes, pulling off to the side of the road in a panic. The tires screeched against the asphalt, and the truck skidded to a stop. My breath was coming in shallow, quick bursts as I tried to steady myself. What the hell was happening? Was it the smell, the exhaustion? Or was it something worse? I grabbed the flashlight from the passenger seat, my hands shaking. I needed to check the cargo again. I had to know, I had to see what was really in the back of this truck. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Climbing out of the cab, I hurried to the back. The truck's lights illuminated the vast, empty expanse of the highway, but I felt a strange sense of dread gnawing at me. As I approached the cargo hold, the whispers seemed to grow louder, but no one was there. I tugged open the back of the truck, and the stench hit me like a slap to the face. It was worse than before. The smell clung to everything, suffocating. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the neatly packed crates of wrapped meat, my pulse racing in my ears. The plastic covering on the slabs looked the same as before. No blood, no leaks, no signs of decay. But the whispers. I stepped forward cautiously, the beam of the flashlight dancing across the cargo. Then I saw it. A slight movement in the corner of the cargo hold. Something was alive. I froze. The plastic on one of the slabs had bulged outward, as though it was struggling to stay contained. I stepped closer, my feet dragging through the thick, oppressive air. The light flickered in my hand as I shined it on the source of the movement. That's... When I saw it, the plastic began to twitch just a little at first. Then it shifted, and I saw the faint outline of something pushing against it. A shape, something trying to break free. My heart pounded against my chest as I backed away, my breath hitching. The whispers grew louder now, a cacophony of voices that didn't make sense. They called my name, but they were distorted, garbled, as though they were being spoken through. "Tay thick wet cloth, help us when it's your turn." I turned and ran back to the cab of the truck, throwing myself into the driver's seat with an urgency that made my hands tremble. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me, and for a moment, I just sat there in the darkness trying to regain my breath. I couldn't stay here. I had to get to the next drop-off. I couldn't just leave the meat sitting in the back. The warehouse would come looking for it, and if I didn't deliver, I didn't even want to think about the consequences. My hands were shaking as I gripped the wheel, but I put the truck back in gear and pulled back onto the road, my mind racing. The whispers wouldn't stop. They followed me as I drove, growing louder and more frantic, urging me forward. It felt like the truck had a life of its own now, like it was driving me. I didn't want to look back at the cargo hold, but I couldn't stop myself. Every now and then I'd glance in the rearview mirror, hoping, praying that nothing had moved. But it was worse than that. When I looked, I saw something in the mirror that wasn't there before. A figure. Standing at the back of the truck, its face barely visible through the thin veil of darkness. The faint outline of a person, or what looked like a person, was standing next to the cargo. The figure was motionless, but its eyes, those wide, hollow eyes, were fixed on me. My breath caught in my throat. The whispers became a chant now. "It's too late. You're not leaving." I slammed the pedal to the floor, pushing the truck faster down the winding road. The night seemed to close in around me, the headlights illuminating only a small patch of the dark highway in front of me. The wind howled as if it were alive, pressing in on the truck from all sides. I didn't know how much longer I could keep driving. The shadows were getting deeper, the eyes were getting clearer in the mirror, and the whispers, they were growing louder. It was only a matter of time before they reached me. I should have known better. The road stretched out ahead, a ribbon of black that cut through the inky night. The engine hummed steadily, a rhythm that should have been comforting, but it only served to highlight the eerie quiet that seemed to hang in the air. Even the wind had fallen silent, as if it too was waiting for something. My hands gripped. The steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. I hadn't looked back at the cargo again. I knew better. The longer I went without looking, the better. But that didn't stop the whispers. They followed me, like a disease, spreading through my thoughts, twisting everything in its path. And that figure, the one I saw in the rearview mirror, still haunted me. It hadn't moved, at least not in a way that I could see, but it was there. It was always there. The soft chime of my phone broke the silence in the truck's cab. The screen flashed with the warehouse number, and I hesitated before answering. I didn't want to deal with it, not now, but there was no avoiding it. The voice on the other end was clipped, sharp. "Where are you?" the dispatcher asked, his tone flat but with an edge of impatience. I looked at the road ahead, my grip tightening on the wheel. "I'm on my way," I said, trying to sound casual. "Had to take a little detour, you know how it is." There was a pause on the other end, just long enough for me to feel a twinge of unease. Then the dispatcher spoke again, this time with a noticeable shift in his voice. "Listen," he said, voice lowering, "you're almost there. Just keep driving straight. When you hit the curve past Lake Thornhill, there's a turnoff. Don't go through the town. Take the old road behind it. Follow it to the end." I frowned. "What's wrong with going through the town? Is there a detour or something?" Another pause, and then, "You'll understand when you get there. Trust me, just take the back road and don't make any stops. We've got everything lined up for you." I was about to ask what he meant by that, but before I could say another word, the line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, confusion flooding my thoughts. The message was clear, but why had the dispatcher been so insistent? Just take the back road, as if it was the only option, but it didn't matter. I had to finish the job. I didn't have the luxury of questioning things anymore. The highway bent and twisted in the dark, the headlights illuminating the thick woods that lined either side. There was something oppressive about the trees, tall and twisted, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers, clawing at the night sky. And the air, God, the air had a heavy metallic tang, like something was rusting away in the distance. I came to the curve, and there it was. The old road. It was barely more than a dirt path, overgrown and narrow, but the dispatcher had been clear. So I turned off the main highway without another thought, my tires kicking up dust as I drove deeper into the darkness. The road seemed endless. It wound around hills and dropped into hollows, each turn darker than the last. The whispers were louder now, cutting through the silence like a knife. They were no longer just murmurs in the back of my head. They were clear, taunting. I heard my name being called, over and over. Each time the voice sounded closer. "Don't look back. It's already inside." I fought the urge to stop the truck, to turn around and drive back the way I came. But some unseen force kept me going forward. The road, twisted and dark, seemed to have its own pull, drawing me deeper into the woods. And then I saw it. In the distance, a flicker of light. At first I thought it was just a trick of my eyes, but then I saw it again, brighter this time, glowing with an unnatural intensity. It wasn't a street lamp, not like I expected. It was something more, something alive. I pushed the gas pedal down harder, wanting to get closer, but as I neared the light I saw the shape. A truck. The same. One I had driven into town. The same model, same color. But this one was parked off the road, its cargo hold open, a pale, sickly light spilling out into the darkness. The truck wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to be the only one delivering tonight. But there it was. Another truck, parked in the middle of nowhere. I pulled up beside it, stopping just far enough to see what was going on. The engine of my own truck sputtered in protest as I switched it off, the noise cutting the air and leaving a ringing silence behind. A man, dressed in the same uniform as I was standing by the open cargo hold of the truck. But something was wrong. He didn't move, not an inch. He just stood there, staring into the truck's empty cargo hold as if waiting for something. I opened the door slowly, not wanting to disturb him. I wasn't sure what I was about to find, but my gut told me I didn't want to get too close. I stepped out into the night, trying to make myself as quiet as possible, but the dry leaves and gravel crunched under my boots. The man's head snapped toward me and I froze. His face was pale, his eyes wide and unblinking, staring at me with a hollow intensity. "Didn't think you'd make it this far," he said, his voice raspy and thin. "You've been chosen. You're one of the deliveries." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My mouth felt dry, like the words wouldn't come out. "What do you mean?" I finally managed, my voice a strained whisper. The man just smiled, a slow, unsettling grin that stretched wider with every passing second. Then he glanced down at the cargo hold behind him, as if to make sure no one else was watching. "It's the meat," he said, leaning in close. His breath reeked of something foul, like rot. "It's not from the animals, not from anything alive. The trucks, they deliver more than just meat. They deliver us." I felt the weight of his words sink into my chest. My hands trembled as I took a step back, but the man's eyes followed me, unblinking, as if waiting for me to understand. "You'll see," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "You'll all see." Before I could react, he turned and climbed into the back of his truck. I stood there, rooted to the spot, as I watched him disappear into the shadows, leaving me standing alone in the darkness. The whispers were louder, now closer, and I realized then, it wasn't the truck that had brought me here. It wasn't the meat, it was me. I was the delivery. The weight of the silence in the truck cab was suffocating. I couldn't shake the image of the driver, his wide, empty eyes, that twisted smile, and the horrific truth he'd tried to convey. "You're one of the deliveries," he had said, his words echoing in my skull. What did that even mean? I wasn't the one being delivered. I was the one delivering, right? But as I sat there in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the wheel, with a deathly tightness, a growing sense of unease twisted my stomach. My foot pressed too hard on the gas, sending the truck speeding down the winding road as the trees blurred past. The light from my headlights barely cut through the suffocating darkness. I didn't know where I was going anymore. My mind was spinning, tangled in thoughts I didn't want to face. But that damned whisper, the one I'd heard earlier in the night, kept creeping back, curling around my thoughts like a snake. "You're next." I wiped my face with my sleeve, trying to clear away the sheen of sweat. It was too hot in the cab, and the air tasted wrong, metallic, like rust and old iron. I flicked the air conditioning switch, but the hum of the engine didn't change. Everything felt too still, too heavy. I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart pounding. The cargo, the meat. The hold was empty now. No, not empty. It wasn't empty at all. The air around me seemed to pulse with an almost tangible energy, as though the truck itself was vibrating with life. I couldn't explain it, but it felt as if the road beneath me had taken on a strange, unnatural curve. I had to stop. I had to look. I didn't have a choice. I pulled over to the side of the road, my tires crunching on the gravel. The truck groaned to a halt, and I sat there for a moment, collecting my thoughts. The night was still too still. I opened the door, stepping out into the cold air. The forest around me was suffocating, the trees looming over me like silent sentinels. There was no sound, no crickets, no birds, just the oppressive silence of the woods closing in. I moved slowly, my steps cautious, as I made my way to the back of the truck. My breath came out in ragged bursts, and I forced myself to keep going. When I reached the cargo hold, my eyes locked on the lock. It was off. I reached for the latch and hesitated, my fingers hovering above the cold metal. A sense of dread washed over me like a tide that rose higher with each passing second. The whispers, faint but persistent, curled around my spine, making my skin crawl. My heart raced in my chest. With a shaky breath, I pulled the latch open. The smell hit me like a tidal wave, a thick, rancid odor that made my stomach churn and twist. It wasn't the same smell from before. This was far worse. Decay, rot, something. That had been left too long. The kind of stench that burned the inside of your nose, making you gag. I shined the flashlight into the cargo hold, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. But there were no slabs of meat. No plastic-wrapped packages of beef or pork or chicken. No, the cargo hold was now filled with something else, something worse. The floor of the hold was covered with a slick, dark substance, like black tar, and the walls seemed to pulse with a sickly yellow light. At the center, something moved, slowly, too slowly. My heart stopped. A body, human, or at least it looked human at first, lay crumpled on the floor, the skin a sickly greenish hue. Its eyes were wide open, bulging from the sockets, and its mouth was agape in a silent scream, frozen in time. The body wasn't just lying there. It was attached to the truck. The skin fused with the walls of the cargo hold. I could see veins pulsing underneath the surface, like the truck itself was feeding off the body. It was alive. Barely. Faint, garbled whisper echoed in my ears as I stumbled backward in horror. My hand shot out to steady myself against the side of the truck, but I was already too far gone. My mind couldn't comprehend what I was seeing, what was happening. The whispers weren't in my head anymore. They were coming from the cargo hold. They were coming from the body. Help us. It's time. You're one of us now. The ground beneath me trembled, and I could feel the truck shudder, as if it were alive, alive with some grotesque, pulsing energy. I turned away from the cargo hold, my mind screaming at me to run, to get out of there before it was too late. But as I backed away, I stumbled and fell to the ground. My flashlight skittered across the gravel, its beam dancing wildly before falling still, and then I saw them. The others. There were more bodies. They were hidden in the corners of the cargo hold, their twisted forms barely visible beneath layers of tar-like substance. The bodies were deformed, contorted, their eyes wide open in unblinking terror. It was as if they had been preserved for something or someone. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and panic surged through me. I had to get out. I had to get away from this nightmare. But then, in the farthest corner of the cargo hold, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure. It was standing upright, its body almost glowing with a faint blue light, its shape shrouded in shadows. But what chilled me to the bone was the eyes that glowed a bright, unnatural blue. It spoke in a low, rasping voice that sent chills crawling up my spine. "You're late," it said, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "The others are waiting." Before I could respond, the ground beneath me cracked open with a deafening roar. The truck jerked violently, as though something was pulling at it, dragging it deeper into the earth. I turned and ran. My legs felt like lead, my heart pounding in my chest as I scrambled for the driver's seat. The truck's door was still open, the light from the cab casting eerie shadows across the ground. My hands were slick with sweat as I climbed back into the truck, my feet slipping on the floor. I slammed the door shut, my breath ragged and wild. The truck's engine roared to life without me even turning the key. The wheel jerked under my hands as if the truck had a will of its own. The wheels spun wildly, and I felt a cold, clammy sweat cover my body. Something had taken control. The whispers surged again, louder now, filling my head. But this time the voices weren't taunting me, they were calling me to something far worse than death, and I was helpless to stop it. The engine growled beneath me, an ominous sound that reverberated through my bones. The truck had a life of its own now. I couldn't feel my hands anymore, couldn't hear my thoughts over the suffocating hum of the engine. I wasn't driving it anymore. It was driving me. The night outside had swallowed everything. The road, once familiar, had become a black void, a labyrinth with no end. The only thing that remained constant was the eerie blue light flickering from the dashboard, casting strange, otherworldly shadows across the cab. My fingers twitched, but I couldn't move them, couldn't stop them from gripping the wheel like they were bound by chains. The whispers filled the air, rising and falling, in a rhythm I couldn't escape. The last delivery, it's almost time. I wanted to scream, to tear at my skin, to wake up from this nightmare, but it was too late. There was no escaping it now. The road ahead was a one-way path to the truth, and the truth was something far worse than I could ever imagine. In the distance through the veil of night I saw it. Another light, a flicker at first, but growing brighter. I should have turned around. I should have found a way out. But I couldn't. I knew that this was where I was meant to go. This was where it all led. The truck sped faster, as if eager to reach its destination. My heart hammered in my chest, but I could no longer distinguish the rhythm of my own pulse from the roaring engine. The air around me seemed to thicken, pressing down on me, suffocating me. The world outside had become a blur of nothingness. The trees, the sky, the road, all merging into one long, dark tunnel. When the truck finally slowed, I barely noticed it. My feet were frozen against the pedals. My hands were glued to the wheel. The truck came to a shuddering stop, and I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like I was about to burst, like the walls of my own body couldn't contain the horror anymore. I looked out the window, but all I saw was darkness, nothing but the void. But then there it was, a shape, tall, looming, and impossibly vast, towered before me. The silhouette of an immense building, its walls lined with twisted, gnarled trees that seemed to grow from the structure itself. The roof was a jagged thing, like a mountain range sliced in half. And the light, I couldn't see where it came from, but it bathed the entire place in a sickly, pulsing glow. I didn't want to get out of the truck. I didn't want to move. But I knew what was coming. I could feel it. The whispers, louder now, were insistent. They weren't asking me to move anymore. They were commanding me, get out. It's time. I opened the door mechanically, as if I were being pulled by invisible strings. My feet hit the ground, cold and unforgiving, but I couldn't feel it. The gravel crunched beneath my boots, but all I could focus on was the building ahead, the place where the deliveries came from, the place where they went. The doors of the Structure opened without a sound, revealing a cavernous interior bathed in that same sickly glow. The walls seemed to pulse with something alive, something beyond the natural world. Shadows danced on the walls, but they didn't behave like shadows. They twisted and writhed like creatures of their own. I stepped inside, my body moving against my will. I couldn't fight it anymore. Every step felt heavier, as if the air itself were becoming more solid, dragging me down, pulling me into the darkness. The doors shut behind me with a finality that left no room for escape. The floor beneath my feet was cold, slick with something I didn't want to think about. The further I walked, the more I felt like I was being swallowed whole. My pulse thudded in my ears, but even that sound seemed distant, muffled by the weight of whatever this was. And then I saw them. Bodies. Hundreds of them, hanging from chains. Their lifeless forms suspended in the air like grotesque ornaments. They were pale, their skin stretched thin and tight, their eyes wide open in frozen terror. They didn't move. They didn't make a sound. But they were there. They were all there. And they were waiting. Waiting for me. I wanted to turn around, to flee, but something held me in place. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. A man. But not a man. His face was obscured by a mask, but his eyes, they were bright, glowing blue, and they pierced me to the core. "I told you," he said, his voice low and rasping. "The truck doesn't stop. It never stops. It brings us all to the same place." In the end, my throat tightened and I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I could barely breathe. The deliveries are never finished, not until they take all of us. The figure stepped closer, and his eyes locked onto mine, burning with an unholy light. "You're part of it now. You will always be part of it." My chest constricted as the realization hit me like a slap to the face. This was the end. The truck, the meat, the bodies. They were never meant for delivery. They were meant to be consumed, and not just by anyone. By us. The ones who had taken this road before me. The ones who had made the same deliveries. They had all become part of the system. And now so had I. I tried to speak, to beg, but the words were drowned out by the rising hum of the machinery around me. The walls seemed to press in, narrowing, suffocating. The truck, the road, the meat. It had all been a lie, a trap, a never-ending cycle. And now it was my turn. The chains rattled and the bodies above me shifted, their eyes following my every movement. "Don't worry," the masked figure whispered, his voice dripping with dark amusement. "You'll get used to it. We all do." And then the blue light filled the room, swallowing everything.